All right, everyone get ready, because today we are going deep into Voltaire's Candide.
Oh, Candide.
It's, a satirical masterpiece. It's
Yeah.
going to take us on this wild and really thought-provoking journey.
Yeah.
So are you ready to kind of tackle some of life's big questions alongside this ridiculously naive but oddly endearing young man named Candide?
Yeah, let's just say Candide's journey
Okay.
is going to seriously challenge your notions of optimism, pessimism, and whether everything is for the best.
Right.
As his ever so optimistic tutor Pangloss would have him believe.
Right.
Voltaire's work was hugely influenced by the times he was living in, the Lisbon earthquake of 1755 and the horrors of the Inquisition.
Yeah.
Those events really shook people's faith in a perfectly ordered world.
That's what I think is so brilliant about Candide.
Yeah.
Is that it's this seemingly lighthearted adventure story. But Voltaire uses it to tackle these huge philosophical questions, head on.
Yeah.
And he does it with this, biting wit and satire that'll have you laughing 1 minute and then completely floor the next.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to truly grasp the depth of Voltaire's satire, I think we have to understand the historical context. He was living in a time when philosophical optimism, the idea that we live in the best of all possible worlds, was a dominant intellectual trend.
Yeah.
But Voltaire saw the flaws in this logic.
Right.
Especially in the face of real-world suffering.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
So Candide starts out in this ridiculously idyllic bubble, living in the grand castle of Baron Thunder Tentronck.
Oh, wow.
In Westphalia.
Okay.
He's totally smitten with the Baron's daughter, Cunigund, and believes wholeheartedly in Pangloss's philosophy that, everything is for the best. Candide's world is essentially this naive paradise. Right. One stolen kiss with Cunigund throws everything into chaos.
That stolen kiss gets Candide expelled from the castle.
Right.
Talk about paradise lost.
Yeah.
Voltaire uses this expulsion to symbolize Candide's loss of innocence and his sudden crash landing into a world that's anything but the best.
Right.
It sets the stage for all the misfortunes that are about to come his way.
And boy, do they ever come.
They do.
From war and religious persecution to shipwrecks and natural disasters, Voltaire throws everything but the kitchen sink at Candide.
Yeah.
It's like one absurd misfortune after another.
It really is.
Take the earthquake that devastates Lisbon, for instance.
Okay.
Voltaire doesn't shy away from depicting the horror and brutality of it all, directly referencing the real-life Lisbon earthquake of 1755, which was a truly catastrophic event.
It was a major turning point, really, in European thought.
Okay.
It forced people to, confront the problem of evil. If there is a benevolent God, why does such suffering exist? Voltaire uses the earthquake in Candide to critique the idea that everything happens for a reason, or that we live in a perfectly ordered world.
And Candide, bless his heart, is stuck trying to reconcile these horrific events with Pangloss's optimistic teachings. It's this constant clash between the absurdity of what he's experiencing and this unshakable belief that everything is for the best. Voltaire's genius, I think, lies in how he uses this contrast to highlight the flaws in Pangloss's logic.
It's important to remember that Voltaire wasn't advocating for pure pessimism. He was using satire to expose the dangers of blind optimism, the kind that ignores the reality of suffering and injustice.
It's not about saying the world is all bad, but about acknowledging the complexities and not shying away from the hard questions. But amidst all this chaos, Candide does have these fleeting moments of hope,
He does.
Like when he reunites with Pangloss, albeit now missing an eye and an ear. Or when they encounter the Anabaptist, James.
James is a fascinating character because he represents a more practical, compassionate form of goodness. Unlike Pangloss, who tries to explain away suffering with, abstract philosophy, James actively works to alleviate it. He helps Candide and Pangloss when they're at their lowest point, offering them shelter and support without any expectation of reward.
Exactly. James is like this breath of fresh air.
He is.
In a world that seems determined to crush Candide's spirit.
Yes.
He's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there are still people who choose kindness and compassion.
Absolutely.
But of course, their journey is far from over. They get shipwrecked again. They end up in South America, where they encounter the corrupt governor of Buenos Aires.
Voltaire uses their experiences in South America to critique European colonialism and the hypocrisy of religious institutions like the Jesuits.
Right.
He portrays the governor as this greedy, power-hungry figure who embodies the worst aspects of colonial exploitation.
And to make matters even wilder, they find out that the governor has taken Cunigund as his mistress.
Right.
Candide thought she was dead this whole time.
Oh my gosh.
Talk about a roller coaster of emotions.
Seriously.
It's like every time things start to look up for Candide, something comes along to knock him back down.
Yeah.
And then, just when you think it can't get any more absurd, they stumble upon El Dorado.
Ah, El Dorado. The mythical land of abundance and wisdom.
Right.
A utopia hidden deep within the South American wilderness.
Yeah.
Voltaire uses El Dorado to explore the concept of a perfect society where wealth and material possessions hold no value, and people are focused on knowledge and happiness.
It's like this ultimate dream come true, right?
Yeah, it is.
But even in this paradise, Candide can't seem to find lasting contentment.
That's because El Dorado, while representing an ideal, is ultimately unattainable.
Right.
Voltaire is making a point about the human condition. We're constantly searching for happiness, but it's often fleeting and elusive.
Right.
Even when we find ourselves in a perfect situation, our own desires and anxieties can prevent us from fully experiencing joy.
So what does Candide do?
Yeah.
Does he stay in this blissful utopia?
You'll have to wait for part 2 to find out.
Okay.
But let me just say that Candide's decision to leave El Dorado, despite all its riches, is a pivotal moment in his journey.
Okay.
It raises some profound questions about what truly brings happiness and whether material wealth can ever satisfy the human heart.
All right, listeners, I know we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
But trust me, we've just scratched the surface of Candide.
Oh,
so far, we've seen Candide's naive optimism crumble in the face of real-world suffering. We've met characters who represent both genuine compassion and blatant hypocrisy.
Right.
And we've even glimpsed a vision of a perfect society, only to see Candide walk away from it.
He does.
We've seen how Voltaire uses humor and satire to expose the flaws in human thinking and the systems of power that perpetuate injustice.
That's right.
But there's so much more to explore.
There is.
So take a moment to kind of process all of this.
Okay.
And we'll pick up Candide's wild ride in part 2.
Sounds good. Welcome back to our deep dive into Voltaire's Candide. When we left off, Candide had found himself in El Dorado, a utopia where gold is worthless and people value knowledge and happiness above all else.
Yeah.
It's like a dream come true, right?
Totally. It seems like the perfect escape from all the chaos and suffering Candide has endured. But if you're familiar with Candide at all, this wouldn't be much of a story if he just stayed there and lived happily ever after.
Exactly, and that's where it gets really interesting. Despite finding himself in this paradise, Candide decides to leave El Dorado. He's still fixated on rescuing Cunigund, the Baron's daughter he's hopelessly in love with. He loads up on riches thinking they'll help him win her back and sets off back into the world.
I love it. It can make us do some pretty crazy things, even leave paradise. So what happens when Candide rejoins the real world? Does he sail off into the sunset with Cunigund and all those riches?
Not quite. Voltaire is a master of satire, and he uses Candide's departure from El Dorado to highlight the folly of chasing after external sources of happiness. Almost immediately after leaving this utopia, Candide is cheated and robbed, losing most of his newfound wealth.
Ouch. It's like Voltaire saying, you can't take it with you, both literally and figuratively. You can have all the riches in the world, but true happiness, true contentment, it comes from somewhere else.
Precisely. And this theme is further emphasized through Candide's encounter with a mutilated slave in Suriname. This experience shatters any remaining illusions he had about the world being inherently good. The slave's story, a brutal testament to the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade, forces Candide to confront the depths of human cruelty.
This is a pivotal moment for Candide. It's like he finally sees the world for what it is, a place where suffering and injustice are rampant, even in a place supposedly overflowing with riches like South America. How does he deal with this newfound awareness?
Well, it's a lot for him to process, especially with Pangloss still chirping in his ear about everything being for the best. Enter Martin, a pessimistic scholar who becomes Candide's new traveling companion. Think of Martin as the philosophical counterpoint to Pangloss.
So while Pangloss is busy finding silver linings in every cloud, Martin is pointing out all the storm clouds gathering on the horizon.
Exactly. Martin has seen the worst of humanity and believes that suffering and misfortune are the dominant forces in the world. While his outlook may seem bleak, it provides a necessary balance to Pangloss's unwavering optimism. Voltaire is presenting us with two extremes, blind optimism and cynical pessimism, and forcing us to consider whether either holds the key to navigating life's complexities.
This is where Voltaire's genius really shines. He's not giving us easy answers or telling us which philosophy to adopt. He's presenting us with these contrasting viewpoints, these flawed characters, and letting us draw our own conclusions.
Absolutely. He's encouraging us to think critically, to question our assumptions, and to recognize the limitations of both extreme optimism and pessimism. And he does it through these hilarious and often absurd situations that Candide finds himself in.
Right, like when they land in Paris and Candide gets caught up in the world of the theater, even having a brief fling with an actress. This episode satirizes the hypocrisy and superficiality of the Parisian elite, a group that Voltaire often criticized in his writings.
And then there's their journey to England, where they witness a public execution. Voltaire uses this event to critique the brutality of the justice system and the arbitrary nature of power. He's constantly poking fun at the institutions and social norms of his time, highlighting their absurdities and contradictions.
And through it all, Candide is slowly but surely shedding his naive worldview. He's realizing that the world isn't this perfectly ordered place where everything happens for a reason. He's starting to see the darkness, the chaos, the inherent unfairness of it all. But he's also experiencing moments of genuine connection and kindness, like his friendship with Martin, despite their philosophical differences.
Exactly. Voltaire is showing us that even in a world filled with suffering and absurdity, there's still room for human connection, for compassion, for finding meaning in the midst of the chaos.
So after all this globe-trotting and soul-searching, does Candide ever find Cunigund?
He does. After a whirlwind of adventures, they finally reunite in Turkey. But there's a twist. Remember, Candide has been carrying this idealized image of Cunigund in his mind for years. But time and hardship have taken their toll. She's no longer the radiant beauty he remembers.
Oh, no. Talk about a rude awakening. How does Candide react to this?
Well, Voltaire, being Voltaire, injects another layer of satire into the situation. Candide, despite her changed appearance, still feels obligated to marry Cunigund. He's clinging to this idea of fulfilling a promise, this vision of love he's held onto throughout his trials.
It's like he's trying to force a happy ending, even though everything around him is telling him that maybe things don't work out that way.
Precisely. And just when it seems like Candide might actually settle down, another obstacle arises. Cunigund's brother, the Baron, reappears on the scene alive and well, and guess what?
He forbids the marriage.
Bingo. Candide thought he had killed the Baron back in South America, but here he is, very much alive and as arrogant and condescending as ever.
So Candide is reunited with his beloved Cunigund, but she's not who he remembers. And her brother, whom he thought was dead, is back to thwart their plans. This is classic Voltaire throwing wrench after wrench into Candide's pursuit of happiness. What happens next? Does he fight for Cunigund's hand? Does he finally give up on this whole love thing?
We'll have to dive into that in part 3. But as you ponder Candide's next move, consider this. Is he still chasing after that naive vision of love and happiness? Or has he learned something from all his misadventures? Has he started to see that maybe, just maybe, true contentment lies in something other than fulfilling these grand ideals? Think about it, and we'll pick up right where we left off in the final part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Voltaire's Candide. It's been quite a ride, wouldn't you say?
It really has.
We've followed Candide from those naive beginnings in the Baron's castle,
right,
through wars, shipwrecks, love lost and found, even a glimpse of utopia in El Dorado.
Yeah.
And now he's back in the thick of it.
He is
reunited with a much-changed Cunigund.
Yeah.
Facing opposition from her resurrected brother.
Right.
And still clinging to that ever-elusive idea of happiness.
And let's not forget Pangloss.
Oh, right.
Still stubbornly clinging to his belief that we live in, the best of all possible worlds, right, even after experiencing firsthand just how brutal that world can be.
It's almost comical how Pangloss can, rationalize any misfortune, any tragedy as somehow being part of some, grand benevolent plan.
Yeah, you gotta wonder.
But after all Candide has witnessed, you have to wonder, is there a breaking point? Is there a moment when even the most devout optimist has to, like, confront the reality of suffering and injustice.
Well, Voltaire doesn't necessarily give us a, like, clear-cut answer to that question, but he does offer us a thought-provoking resolution to Candide's journey.
Right.
Remember, we left off with Candide determined to marry Cunigund. Yes.
Despite her brother's objections and the fact that she's no longer the idealized beauty he once envisioned.
So does he go through with it? Yeah. Does he finally get his happily ever after with Cunigund?
He does, in a way, out of a sense of obligation and perhaps a bit of stubbornness.
Right.
Candide marries Cunigund.
Okay.
But the Baron, true to his character, refuses to reconcile and continues to, like, look down on Candide as someone beneath his social standing.
It's like even after all his adventures, all the wisdom he supposedly gained, Candide is still trying to kind of fit into the mold that society has created for him. He's trying to achieve happiness by adhering to these, like, external expectations rather than following his own path.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
And it, like, highlights one of the central themes of Candide.
Okay.
The futility of chasing after external sources of happiness.
Okay.
Wealth, status, romantic love.
Yeah. These things may bring temporary satisfaction, but they don't guarantee lasting fulfillment.
So what does bring lasting fulfillment?
Right.
If Voltaire is, like, critiquing all these traditional paths to happiness, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Does he offer us any guidance?
He does, in a rather subtle and unexpected way.
Okay.
Candide and his companions, Pangloss, Martin, the ever-resourceful Cacambo, and the old woman who's been with Cunigund through thick and thin, they all end up living together on a small farm.
A farm? That's it.
Yeah.
After all their globe-trotting and adventures,
I know,
they settle down to a life of farming.
It might seem anticlimactic, but there's a profound message embedded in the simple act of cultivation. One day they encounter a wise Turkish farmer who shares his secret to contentment.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
What's this wise farmer's secret?
He tells them, I am content to work. It keeps me from 3 great evils: boredom, vice, and need.
Wow.
It's a philosophy of, like, practical action, of finding meaning and purpose in honest labor, in focusing on what we can control, what we can create with our own hands.
So it's not about, like, ignoring the problems of the world or pretending that everything is perfect.
No.
It's about, you know, finding a way to live a meaningful life within the realm of what's possible, what's within our reach.
Exactly. And it's significant that this wisdom comes from a simple farmer. Someone who's, like, far removed from the intellectual and social circles that Candide has been so disillusioned by. Voltaire is suggesting that true wisdom often lies in the most unexpected places, in the everyday experiences of ordinary people.
It's a powerful message.
It is.
Especially in a world that often glorifies wealth, status, and the pursuit of grand ideals. Voltaire is reminding us that, you know, true contentment might be found in the simple act of tending to our own gardens. Both literally and metaphorically.
And that's where Candide leaves us. With Candide uttering the now famous line, "Let us cultivate our garden."
It's such a simple phrase, yet it carries so much weight.
It does.
It's an invitation to kind of turn away from the endless pursuit of abstract ideals and focus on the tangible, the things we can build and nurture in our own lives.
It's a call to action. A reminder that we have the power to create meaning and find a measure of happiness, even in an imperfect world.
I love how Voltaire doesn't give us a, like, definitive answer, a neatly tied up ending. He leaves it open to interpretation.
He does.
Does Candide truly find happiness in tending to his garden? Is this, like, simple life enough to satisfy his restless spirit?
That's the beauty of Candide. It's a work that continues to provoke discussion and debate centuries after it was written. It challenges us to question our assumptions, confront the complexities of the world, and ultimately to define what it means to live a good life.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Candide, we leave you with one final question to ponder. What will you cultivate in your own garden?
Ooh, good one.
What are those things, those activities, those relationships that bring you a sense of purpose, of meaning and joy?
Absolutely.
Voltaire might not have all the answers,
right,
but he certainly gives us plenty to think about.
He does.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Thanks for having me.
And happy cultivating.